This is Mr. Eugene, and today we're addressing something that ruins more marriages than infidelity: women's complete inability to accept accountability, not occasional difficulty with it, complete, systematic, automatic rejection of any attempt to address their behavior. You know exactly what I'm talking about. A man tries to address something his wife did, something objectively problematic, something that needs to be discussed. He's calm, he's reasonable, he's specific about the behavior and its impact. Her response? Tears or rage, or accusations that he's attacking her, or immediate deflection to something he did weeks ago, or shutting down completely and refusing to engage, or the classic, "I can't believe you're doing this to me." What just happened? He tried to address a legitimate issue. She turned it into him victimizing her. The person whose behavior created the problem is now the victim, and the person trying to solve the problem is now the villain. This pattern plays out millions of times daily in marriages across the world, and it's absolutely destroying them, because you cannot build anything healthy with someone who refuses accountability. You cannot solve problems with someone who makes every attempt to address problems into an attack on them. Today, we're examining why women respond to accountability this way, what it actually reveals about how they see themselves and their husbands, why this is so catastrophic for marriages, and what needs to fundamentally change. Stay with me. This is the conversation most people are too afraid to have. Why accountability feels like attack. Let me start by explaining what's actually happening psychologically when a woman reacts defensively to accountability, the unicorn delusion. Most women have gone through life rarely being held accountable for anything, not in childhood, not in school, not in dating, not in early marriage. When she misbehaved as a child, she was protected more than her brothers. When she struggled in school, she got more support and accommodation. When she made mistakes in dating, men competed to forgive her and give her another chance. When she created problems early in marriage, he let it slide to keep the peace. Decades of this creates a fundamental distortion in how she sees herself. She's not just a person who makes mistakes like everyone else. She's special, protected, above criticism, a delicate creature who shouldn't be confronted harshly. She starts believing she's basically perfect, that her opinions are always valid, that her feelings are always justified, that her actions are always understandable even when they're clearly wrong. This isn't conscious arrogance. This is what happens when someone goes through life without the normal correction mechanisms everyone else experiences. She genuinely believes she's a gorgeous, dainty, glowing unicorn who is a special blessing to any man she chooses to grace with her presence. So when her husband addresses her behavior, when he points out she did something wrong or harmful or irrational, it doesn't compute. Because in her self-image, she doesn't do things that deserve criticism. The only explanation her mind can generate is that he's attacking her, that he's being mean, that he's trying to control or dominate or humiliate her, because the alternative, that she's actually wrong about something, contradicts everything she's been taught to believe about herself. The never confronted reality. Here's the critical part. Most women have very rarely, if ever, been truly confronted about their broken logic or bad behavior. Men confront each other constantly. Your idea is wrong. Your behavior is unacceptable. Your performance is inadequate. Men grow up getting direct, sometimes harsh feedback about their thinking and their actions. This builds calibration. It teaches men that being wrong is normal, that needing correction is part of growth, that criticism is an attack, it's information. Women don't get this. When women interact with each other, the feedback is indirect, passive-aggressive, covert. They don't directly confront. They gossip behind backs. They give subtle social signals, but they don't say directly, "Your thinking on this is wrong, and here's why." And men don't confront women either, not in dating, not in early relationship. Men avoid confronting women because female emotional reactions make confrontation costly, so they let things slide, they accommodate, they work around rather than address. This means by the time a woman reaches marriage, she's had maybe 30 years of life without anyone directly, clearly, consistently holding her accountable for irrational thinking or destructive behavior. So when her husband finally does it, when he's forced to because the problem has become too big to ignore, she experiences it as unprecedented attack, because for her, it is unprecedented. Nobody has ever talked to her this way. Nobody has ever insisted she's wrong despite her feelings saying she's right. What her reaction reveals when a woman reacts to accountability with defensiveness, tears, rage, or deflection, she's revealing something critical about her internal framework. She believes she's always right. If her opinion or feeling says something is true, it must be true. If she feels hurt, someone must have hurt her intentionally. If she feels justified in her behavior must be justified. She's been taught to trust her feelings as ultimate truth, that her internal experience is authoritative, that questioning her feelings is invalidating her. So when he presents objective facts that contradict her feelings, when he shows her behavior was wrong even though she felt justified, she can't integrate that information. Her feelings and reality are in conflict, and she's been trained to trust feelings over reality. This is why you can show a woman clear evidence she's wrong, and she'll still insist she's right, because her feeling of being right overrides the evidence of being wrong. She believes criticism equals abuse. She's been taught that any discomfort a man creates for her is abuse, that if his words make her feel bad, he's being abusive, that raising his voice is violence, that insisting she's wrong when she feels she's right is gaslighting. This framework makes accountability impossible, because accountability inherently creates discomfort. It requires accepting you were wrong. It requires sitting with the feeling of being corrected. It requires humility. But she's been taught discomfort from a man is abuse, so accountability becomes abuse in her framework, and you cannot hold someone accountable who's been taught that being held accountable is abuse. She values protection over growth. Deep down, she doesn't actually want to grow. Growth requires discomfort. It requires facing hard truths. It requires changing behaviors that feel natural to her. What she wants is protection from discomfort, protection from criticism, protection from having to examine herself honestly, protection from consequences. And she's been given that protection her entire life, from parents who sheltered her, from teachers who accommodated her, from men who tolerated her, from society that tells her she's perfect as she is. So when her husband refuses to provide that protection, when he insists she needs to change, she experiences it as betrayal. He's supposed to protect her from discomfort, not create it. Why men are forced to confront. Let me be clear about something. Most husbands don't want to confront their wives. They're not doing it because they enjoy conflict or want to dominate or get off on making her uncomfortable. They're doing it because they have no choice. She's put them in an impossible position. The rock and the hard place. Option 1. Confront her about the destructive behavior, face her emotional reaction, deal with tears, rage, accusations, days or weeks of hostility, risk the relationship becoming worse short term. Option 2, say nothing. Let the destructive behavior continue. Watch the problem get worse. Accept that the marriage is built on avoiding issues rather than solving them. Live with growing resentment and deteriorating conditions. Neither option is good, but option 2 is worse, because option 2 is slow death. It's accepting permanent dysfunction to avoid temporary discomfort. So he chooses option 1, not because he wants to, because staying silent is surrender. And surrendering means accepting a life where her bad behavior faces no consequences and the family suffers indefinitely. What he's actually trying to do. He's not trying to dominate her. He's not trying to humiliate her. He's not trying to prove he's right and she's wrong for his ego. He's trying to help her see reality more clearly so she can be a better partner, so they can both win more often, so the family can function better. He sees patterns she doesn't see. He sees consequences she doesn't anticipate. He sees how her behavior affects the kids, the finances, the home environment, him, and he cares enough about the family to risk her displeasure by addressing it. That's not abuse. That's leadership. That's investment. That's love willing to be uncomfortable to create better outcomes. He should be applauded for this, not attacked. A man who has enough love and courage to address his wife's bad behavior instead of just tolerating it or leaving is rare. Most men give up and either check out emotionally or exit entirely. The fact that he's still trying, still investing, still believing she can change, that's valuable. And treating it as attack is destroying something she should be protecting. Real examples? The pattern in action. Let me show you exactly what this looks like in real marriages. Example 1, the spending issue. They agreed on a budget. She agreed to it, seemed on board. 2 weeks later, she's $600 over budget on discretionary spending. He addresses it calmly. Hey, we talked about the budget. You're significantly over. What happened? Her response, immediate tears. Why are you always controlling what I spend? I work too. This is my money. You're being ridiculous. And by the way, you spent money on that tool last month that we didn't need. None of this addresses the actual issue. They had an agreement. She violated it. That's the fact requiring discussion. But she's made him the villain for bringing it up. She's deflected to his spending from last month. She's crying. She's accusing him of being controlling. Now, instead of discussing the budget violation, he's comforting her or defending himself or dropping the issue entirely to restore peace. The behavior that created the problem never gets addressed. It will happen again next month and the month after, because she's learned that emotional reaction prevents accountability. Example 2, the disrespect. She disrespects him in front of her family, interrupts him, contradicts him, makes jokes at his expense, undermines his authority with the kids. He addresses it privately afterward. When you do that in front of your family, it's disrespectful. I need you to stop. Her response, you're too sensitive. They don't mean anything by it. Why are you trying to come between me and my family? You're being controlling. And you embarrassed me last week when you didn't want to go to that party. She's denied the behavior mattered, accused him of being too sensitive, reframed him as trying to control her family relationships, deflected to something he did. The actual disrespect never gets acknowledged, never gets addressed, never changes, because she's made his attempt to address it into him being the problem. Example 3, the parenting decision. They discussed how to handle discipline with the kids, agreed on an approach. She immediately undermines it when he's not around, does the opposite of what they agreed. He addresses it. We agreed on this approach. When you do something different, it confuses the kids and undermines what we're trying to build. Her response, I'm their mother. I know what they need. You're trying to control how I parent. This is just like when you tried to tell me how to handle my job. You always think you know better than me. She's pulled rank as mother, accused him of being controlling, brought up an unrelated past issue, made his concern about consistency into him attacking her competence. The undermining continues. The kids learn mom and dad aren't on the same page. The family structure weakens because she refuses to be held accountable for violating agreements. Why this destroys marriages? This pattern doesn't just create frustration. It fundamentally destroys the marriage's ability to function. Problems never get solved. If she can't accept accountability, problems can't be addressed. If problems can't be addressed, they don't get solved. If they don't get solved, they accumulate. Over years, the marriage becomes buried under unresolved issues. Each one individually might be manageable, but collectively they create a weight that crushes everything. He becomes exhausted from trying to address things that never change. She becomes defensive from what she experiences as constant criticism. The relationship becomes defined by unresolved conflict neither can escape. He stops trying. Eventually, after enough cycles of bringing up issues and facing emotional warfare, he stops, not because the problems went away, because trying to solve them costs more than tolerating them, because her reaction to accountability is worse than just living with her dysfunction. So he checks out, stops caring, stops investing, stops trying to make things better. He becomes the distant, disengaged husband she complains about, not because he's inherently cold, because she trained him that engagement is punished. And she'll never connect his disengagement to her refusal of accountability. She'll just see him as having changed, as not being the man she married, as failing her. The resentment builds. Every time she escapes accountability through emotional reaction, he resents it, resents that she can violate agreements without consequence, resents that he can't address problems without war, resents that the marriage operates under rules where she's exempt from responsibility. That resentment accumulates quietly, invisibly, until one day he's completely done, not because of one big thing, because of 10,000 small things she was never held accountable for, and she'll be shocked because from her perspective things were fine, a few arguments here and there, normal marriage stuff. She had no idea he was keeping score, had no idea the resentment was building, had no idea her refusal of accountability was systematically destroying his investment in the marriage. What needs to change for women reading this? Here's what actually needs to happen. Recognize you're not a victim. When your husband addresses your behavior, you're not being attacked, you're being given information that could make your life and your marriage better. His words are not abuse, they're feedback, sometimes uncomfortable feedback, but discomfort from feedback is not the same as abuse. If you're feeling defensive, that's not evidence he's wrong, that's evidence you're being confronted with something you don't want to face. Sit with that discomfort instead of escaping it through emotional reaction. Accept that you're not always right. Your feelings aren't ultimate truth. Your perspective isn't automatically correct. Your intentions don't justify all your actions. You're a human being who makes mistakes, who has blind spots, who sometimes does things that hurt people even when you didn't mean to, who operates from broken assumptions you've never examined. Being wrong is normal. Needing correction is part of growth. Accepting accountability isn't weakness, it's maturity. See his confrontation as investment. A man who stopped caring doesn't confront, he just tolerates or leaves. The fact that your husband is still trying to address issues means he's still invested, still believes things can get better, still cares enough to risk your displeasure. That's valuable. That's what you should want. A man who sees problems and addresses them instead of just accepting dysfunction or walking away. Treat his willingness to confront as the gift it is, not as attack, as evidence he hasn't given up on you or the marriage yet. Learn to sit with discomfort. When he brings something up and you feel defensive, don't react. Pause. Breathe. Recognize that the discomfort you're feeling is growth trying to happen. Ask yourself, why am I reacting this way? What am I defending? Is there truth in what he's saying that I don't want to face? The discomfort is not an emergency requiring immediate escape. It's an opportunity to understand yourself better, to see a blind spot, to become a better partner. You can tolerate discomfort. You've tolerated far worse things in life. Sitting with uncomfortable truth from someone who loves you is not the worst thing that can happen to you. Destroying your marriage by refusing accountability is worse. Final thoughts. Women's inability to accept accountability is destroying marriages at scale, not because women are inherently bad, but because they've been taught that any discomfort a man creates is abuse, that their feelings are always valid, that they're perfect as they are, and anyone suggesting otherwise is attacking them. This creates women who cannot be partnered with, cannot be held accountable, cannot grow, cannot solve problems, cannot build healthy marriages. And the men married to these women face an impossible choice: tolerate dysfunction forever or address it and face emotional warfare. Most choose tolerance until they can't anymore, then they leave. The women left behind are confused. They thought things were fine. They had no idea he was drowning in resentment. They never connected their defensive reactions to his eventual departure. Ladies, repeat after me. I am not a victim of my husband's helpful suggestions. I am lucky to have a man who is still willing to help make me a better person. If you can internalize that, if you can learn to receive accountability with humility instead of defensiveness, you can transform your marriage, you can keep a good man instead of driving him away, you can build something healthy instead of destroying it through refusal to grow. Drop a comment. Men, have you stopped trying because her reaction isn't worth it? Women, can you recognize this pattern in yourself? Subscribe for the truths about marriage that nobody wants to say but everybody needs to hear.